I'm Orla O'Connor and I'm the Director of the National Women's Council, and I really want to welcome you all, members, friends, to today's event, which is our consultation on CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. I particularly want to thank the Irish Women Lawyers Association who are supporting and joining with us in this event today. We're delighted for that. In the Women's Council, we really consider CEDAW to be an extremely important tool for the advancement of women's rights in Ireland, because it does provide that framework in which we can hold the government to account in terms of their record on women's rights. And it also provides a framework where we can see both the advancement and the lack of advancement in terms of progress on women's rights in Ireland. Ireland signed and ratified CEDAW in 1985, and the government committed itself to achieving equality between women and men in Ireland in a number of different areas, and we'll be hearing a lot about those today, but in the areas of political and public life, in health, education and employment. And the government also committed to having its record reviewed under the Convention at least every 4 years by the independent expert body under the UN, the CEDAW Committee. And our commitment in terms of implementing CEDAW, will now be examined in early 2017. We're not sure exactly of the date, but it'll be around February, early March. So as part of this process, the state has already submitted a written response, and they submitted their response on the 15th of September to a list of issues from the CEDAW Committee. And this is going to be called Ireland's combined 6th and 7th periodic report to the UN CEDAW Committee. And some of you may be aware, there has been a huge delay in Ireland's reporting, in submitting Ireland's report. It was originally due in 2007. So here we are in 2016. Definitely not a good sign. And this is part of a new process within UN committees that have facilitated governments to report late and also to combine reports. So this is a significant report for Ireland, because there hasn't been one in such a long period of time. Now we have raised concerns, as other organisations have, in terms of that, and also internationally this has been raised as well, such as in the Universal Periodic Review as well. So in terms of the context that this report is going in, I think it is important to note, and we'll be talking about it later, but that there is a context in terms of the whole period of recession and austerity and the impact that's had both on you, our members, on the women's sector and on women's organisations. So there's a really important context in which Ireland is reporting. And issues around that, I suppose the impact of austerity on women has also been raised with the Irish government through other UN mechanisms. So it's an important context, we feel, in terms of presenting both the Irish government's report, but also for the Women's Council in preparing our shadow report. So the Women's Council will be presenting a shadow report for submission to the CEDAW Committee, and this is very much part of what today is about. The purpose of that shadow report is to highlight both issues that are not raised by the government in their report, but also as well where the government have focused on achievements where we feel they haven't made enough achievement, or where they have minimised and neglected to deal with certain issues. So we'll see our report as being quite comprehensive, and at the same time we will be putting forward very clear priorities to the CEDAW Committee, because we think that that's quite critical in terms of how they hold the government to account. So the shadow report for us, we believe, is an important opportunity both to engage with you, our members, with women in Ireland, and also to engage with the committee in terms of calling to attention the issues that we feel that the Irish government is neglecting in terms of women's equality. So the purpose really of today is to highlight both the importance of CEDAW, its relationship in terms of Ireland, women's organisations, and to highlight as many practical ways that CEDAW can be used for campaigning and for lobbying work. And the second part of today, which will be after lunch, is to have roundtable discussions, which is really about getting your opinions, your perspectives and concerns in relation to the state's report, and that helps us put together the shadow report. I do want you to know that The intention for today, and I think it's working, is that this is being live streamed. So just this is being filmed, so just so that you're aware of that. And I also should have said at the start, we want to thank the Lord Mayor's Office for using the Mansion House today. So I really hope that you enjoy today, that you can participate, as much as possible, because that's going to be really important for us. That you also get something from today in terms of thinking about how CEDAW can be used and related to your work in terms of campaigning and lobbying. So I hope it's a really useful day. And I'm going to start because we're really delighted with the panel that we have here this morning and the expertise they bring to the discussion. And the first person who's a sort of keynote person this morning is Violeta Neubauer. And Violeta has such a wide range of experience in terms of this. She's come from Slovenia, and we really appreciate her travelling for the meeting this morning. And Violeta was a member of the CEDAW committee from 2007 to 2014. So her experience of being on that committee is hugely valuable to us in the preparations around our shadow report. And Violeta will also be staying with us for the full day, so we'll also be here for the discussions within the afternoon. So I think it gives you an opportunity as well to have conversations with her. So we're very grateful to her for that. And also in terms of other work, Violeta was also part of, participated in the drafting of the Istanbul Convention, which is a very core piece of our work, which is the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. So I'm delighted that Violeta is here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing her speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Violeta, just before, I should have said to people, sorry, just for those of you on social media, we're just using the hashtag CEDAW, and that's authentically so. Right, sorry.
Good morning. I know I can't do justice to all of you that came together here today to explore how to better use CEDAW in your own work and how to better use CEDAW in one of the very important role you have, and that's to keep government at account for implementing to what they agreed upon to do. But I'm really very very grateful to the National Women's Council for finding out who an expert might be to join your events in the preparation for the next year dialogue of your state delegation with the CEDAW committee. And I'm really very glad to be here. I've been working on CEDAW intensively for almost 25 years, not only as serving the committee for the 2 terms, but prior to that, in Slovenia I was a national gender equality expert responsible for the preparation of reports under CEDAW Convention, and I was always pretty much behaving very strange in terms of being a civil servant. I started to work with the government as the first person employed in the Government Office for Gender Equality in 1992. I never allowed myself to climb on the hierarchy because I wanted to remain an expert and not holding any so-called politically influenced position, because that allowed me also to be a founder member of a number of NGOs and to remain active member and activist to promote the rights of women in Slovenia, in Europe and worldwide. But with all this experience, I'm always so eager to learn more, and believe me, I always learn something new about CEDAW Convention when I meet people like you because we end up discussing something that maybe have not yet been enough explored, or we have not yet have a crystal clear ideas about certain provisions that could be used better in a specific national context. That's my introduction, why I am honored to be here. By now, I can imagine that all of you, if not all, majority of you, are very familiar with the CEDAW Convention, given that it was adopted in 1979. But nevertheless, I realize that we have constantly to repeat what is so special about this, we call it shortly Women's Convention, or International Bill of Rights for Women. When we compare it, for instance, with European law, with European Union law, one of the first things I would like to say, CEDAW Convention, in comparison to the European Union law, in comparison to most of the national relevant legislation, is much, much broader. It has no exemptions. It doesn't give any special benefits to anyone or restrict any positive or negative behavior in relation to any person. What most of the European Union law does, it always starts in the beginning with exemptions related to the specific directive, like the one I was negotiating really toughly on equal access to goods and services. And you know, it excludes a variety of areas from the principle of equal access to and provision of goods and services. The convention, the CEDAW Convention, really symbolizes the climax of the decades-long efforts to create an integrated legal mechanism to advance women's rights in all spheres of life and throughout their life cycle. That is why, for instance, the CEDAW Committee in Geneva works so closely with the Committee on the Rights of the Child. We are trying to engender the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the work of the CEDAW is trying to engender the work of that committee. And I could be defined as a pioneer in doing this, engendering other human rights treaty bodies, because during my serving of the CEDAW Committee, when we were moved from New York to Geneva, because CEDAW Committee used to have its session in New York, and was serviced by the Division for the Advancement of Women in New York, but then the then High Commissioner for Human Rights wanted to have her human rights family in Geneva, and they were, of course, it was a unilateral decision, even though the convention clearly says that we sit in New York. But, okay, funding and gender equality is always the area where we can start cutting funds. That's internationally, nationally, and locally. And they were saying, yes, but you will have advantages, you will meet with other treaty bodies and so on, what is very difficult, because when the experts are there, they have really a very, very busy day. But I started to explore, and I had good relations with UNICEF, and I ended up that the two committees decided to start drafting a joint general recommendation I was a chair of that joint working group of experts of the committee that is monitoring the implementation of the CEDAW Convention, and experts of the CRC. And just during the last session of my last term, we ended up by the two committees adopting the first ever joint interpretation of issues of provisions under the two different conventions on harmful practices. Harmful practices harmful to girls and women, but mutatis mutandis, when relevant, also to boys, so that also they can be used under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So for me that's very important. So CEDAW committee really looks at the whole lifespan of women. I must say that I understand CEDAW committee that it really became the central and most elaborative women's rights legal protection instrument, and after all an ultimate basis for development and evolution of the subsequent women's rights and strategies to protect them. We can see now with the new agenda 2030, the Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights during the last session of the CEDAW Committee in Geneva said the agenda is the implementing instrument for the CEDAW Convention. So it means, you know, the CEDAW Convention gives a legal basis and the Beijing platform for action. Now the Agenda 2020 are the implementation package for safeguarding the full enjoyment of all freedoms and human rights by women, not only on equality with men, but women on equality with women. And that is why I like the term discrimination against women. It's not discrimination on the grounds of sex. Because when you say on the grounds of sex, then you compare with men and women. Under the CEDAW Convention, we are comparing women with women. Women belonging to a variety of groups, which, because belonging, or because they are perceived to belong to certain groups, are discriminated against because their initial level of opportunities is not equal to those that might be at the best, as a group in the best position. Today, CEDAW Convention has been ratified by 189 state parties. You all know that the USA is not a member of the CEDAW Convention, and when Obama was elected, I was in the delegation that we went in Washington to persuade them to ratify the convention, but it was made very clear that the United States of America will probably never ratify this convention, as they didn't ratify a number of other human rights treaties. And the optional protocol, of course, which gave the power to the committee of experts that is serving the women of the world under this convention, was another climax of the maybe the most dramatic advance in establishing the state parties' responsibility for violation of human rights of women under the CEDAW Convention. The optional protocol, I know that we will have today a speaker that will explore how to utilize the optional protocol which gave women and groups of women in those countries that ratified the optional protocol, as by now there are 107 state parties to the optional protocol. It means, again, quite a number of state parties to the convention do not want their women and groups of women to have a possibility to defend, to have someone that defends their rights at the global level. I will not speak further about optional protocol because it would be waste of time, but what I would like to say about the CEDAW Convention. Whatever the potential, the strength, the power of this Women's Convention is in the very text of the Convention, complemented with the general recommendation that the committee is mandated under the Convention to adopt in order to provide an authoritative interpretation of the meaning of the provisions of the Convention to the state parties. Its strength, it only depends on adequate implementation. But for adequate implementation of the CEDAW Convention, the state parties, the CEDAW Committee, women themselves, women's rights activists, NGOs, they must understand this meaning of the substantive content. And it must be properly understood by all relevant state bodies and organs at all levels. And again, my experience in the 8 years serving this committee is that there are quite a number of states that have their own interpretation of the provisions of the CEDAW Committee and do not follow the interpretation that the committee is providing and are challenging the committee, calling on the committee that the committee is creating new rights. No, we are not creating new rights. The committee we have not been creating new rights. The committee has just was giving flesh and blood on the bones, on the very basic substantive content to that convention through general recommendation and in particular through developing its case law with the decisions related to the complaints and inquiries under the optional protocol. Today we are all aware also that the understanding of whatever legal norms and standards, and in particular of such a global international human rights instruments must constantly evolve. First, according to the CEDAW Committee experts' dynamic, and forward-looking and progressive clarification and interpretation of the standards and substantive content of the Convention, which, of course, must accommodate the development of international law and must accommodate the development of international human rights case law. To this end, it is of critical importance that the government, the Irish government, and in particular the so-called gender equality mechanisms, institutional mechanisms, and women's human rights NGO ensure that the CEDAW Convention and general recommendation on the meaning of the provisions of the Convention are available, and accessible to all relevant state institutions at all levels of the country, but also to all other stakeholders. I would also like to share with you what, for me, when I joined the women's movement in Slovenia, was already then very important, and is so clearly reflected in the CEDAW Convention. And these are the three core interrelated principles, and that's in the Convention, and that's principle of equality, principle of non-discrimination, and principle of state obligation. Principle of equality, you know, today we speak about substantive equality, equality of results, and not anymore only about equality of opportunities. It's also clear that to achieve substantive equality, we have to recognize that it may be necessary to treat men and women differently, and to treat women themselves differently. So, and to create, of course, the substantive equality also carry with it this concept of enabling conditions, and this is where the difference arises from creating enabling conditions to women in different situations with different initial conditions. The principle of discrimination, again, pretty much similar to what we have in how you have in your national legislation. What is relevant in comparison to most of the national legislation and, for instance, European Union law, and the principle of non-discrimination under CEDAW Convention is its unique development and the decision under the optional protocol that stereotyping is a discrimination and that it violates women's human rights. And this was a pioneering decision also at the world level, that the CEDAW committee deciding that wrongful stereotyping, not negative, not any negative stereotyping is discriminatory stereotyping. Negative stereotyping, saying, you know, women are carriers and men are the breadwinners, doesn't really affect us. Yes, we are. We do care for people, and we do care for the society, and we do care for our own professional life. That's nothing wrong. It's a stereotype, but it's not discriminatory, unless, of course, we have a policy that is based on this stereotyping and this linking, is giving women less opportunities to live their fully satisfied life in all the areas that today, as individuals, we are living in our societies. So this is why, and of course, CEDAW committee has developed and already had in a very origin of the text a ground for developing further intersectional multiple forms of discrimination, because you know we have Article 14 in the Convention on Rural Women. So that is where the Convention gave opened the window for the CEDAW Convention to speak about intersectionality in respect of women enjoying women guarantees of rights under this convention. Usually they are calling this group of women vulnerable groups. I myself was were always strongly hurted when we were using these terms, because women are not vulnerable. They are never vulnerable by themselves. It is the state that puts them in positions which are vulnerable, in situations which are vulnerable to women, with not acting adequately to secure that no one individual becomes vulnerable because of conditions out of her and his own physical body and all that is associated with our physiology. I'm also very proud that finally the CEDAW committee has agreed upon using the sexual orientation and gender identity as a basis for discrimination against women. It was a very, very tough battle, because the CEDAW committee is composed of 23 experts coming from different regions. They are elected by all the state parties, and it means that I was calling the CEDAW committee a real laboratorium of cultural diversity. And believe me, the committee internal dynamic, internal modus operandi, it is just the same as our parliaments do, as our governments do, when you have experts who are defending the set of their own personal values, even though experts should be independent and neutral, and that's not always the case. But anyhow, again, we are there now, and with this, I'm saying the CEDAW continues to be in an avant-garde of the international human rights legal framework. What is very important under the CEDAW Convention, and that's important for the Irish government, is the principle of state obligation. And you know that the state party has the obligation to respect, which means that the country must refrain from making laws, policies, regulations, programs, administrative procedures, and institutional structures that directly or indirectly result in the denial of the equal enjoyment by women of all their rights under the Convention. Then is the obligation, state obligation to protect, which requires a state to protect women from discrimination committed by public authorities, the judiciary, and private actors, including individuals in the public and private spheres, and take steps directly aimed at eliminating customary and all other practices that perpetuate the notion of inferiority or superiority of women and men, and women among women, and of stereotyped roles for men and women, but as I said, harmful discriminatory stereotypes. Then is the obligation to fulfill, which requires the state to take a wide variety of steps to ensure that women enjoy both the equality in law, the jure equality, and also de facto full enjoyment of rights by women, meaning enjoying them in practice, and again, not only on the basis of equality with men, but on the basis of equality among women, of women, equality for women. I like the title of this event. The human rights of women shall be fulfilled by the promotion of the substantive equality with all appropriate means, such as concrete and effective policies and programs aimed at improving the position of women and achieving such equality, and as you probably also are aware, including where appropriate with so-called special temporary measure, positive action. However, we have a variety of terms that European countries are using in that respect, but the CEDAW committee is using a term temporary special measures. So it means that this obligation of the state assigned the role to the state to be a duty holder, and a duty holder in this respect has obligation of means and of results. And the non-fulfillment of the right to equality is just as much discrimination as non-prohibiting discrimination or unequal and unfair differential treatment of two individuals of whatever gender. This has far-reaching implications for the obligation of the state, as the elimination of discrimination against women may require, according to the situation, the asymmetrical treatment. And also, I would like to say that together with the state obligation, responsibility of the state, I like very much the Article 2 in the CEDAW Convention, which says that this obligation must be implemented without delay. What does it mean? In General Recommendation 28 on the core article, Article 2 of the CEDAW Convention, the committee has explained that this means that the state cannot justify the delay in making any efforts to ensure full substantive equality of women on any grounds, including political, social, cultural, religious, economic austerity should not be a justification for not doing what the state is obliged to do and what the state agreed to do when ratified or acceded to the convention. With regard to the NGOs, that is what's the most important. The NGOs were the first ally of the CEDAW committee. And the relationship between the CEDAW committee and NGO has been really growing, has been formalized in 2010 when the committee adopted the statement on the relationship between the CEDAW committee and the NGOs, where it was explained what is the role of NGO vis-à-vis the convention. And let me say that very often the NGOs are the only voice of women from a particular state that brings their voices to this global guardian of women's rights, to the CEDAW committee. Therefore, preparing the shadow reports or alternative reports is very important, but it's equally important to be there in all phases, to be there like was the situation for Ireland this year, because Ireland requested the CEDAW committee to be availed the opportunity to use the simplified reporting procedure, which I must agree is really a shame for your country, that the last report has been submitted in 2002, and that after 14 years the country dared to ask to use the simplified reporting procedure, which in my mind would be, you know, for some small Pacific Island countries where they really don't have the administrative capacities and institutional capacities to do that. But okay, that's the conditions which apply to this, and now Ireland has the simplified reporting procedure, meaning the responses to the list of issues and questions that were submitted to the committee on 15 September now represent the 6th and 7th combined periodic report. I know how much you have contributed for the pre-session working group, but what I noticed, and here I would like to share our very, how to say, personal experiences with such type of shadow reporting to the committee. You have quite a high number of particular shadow reports on different concerns, on different priorities, and that really kills experts of the CEDAW committee. Let's say, okay, a rapporteur designated to be responsible for Ireland dedicate all the necessary time, but the other experts of the committee who during the same session engage in a dialogue with 8 or 12 states delegation with countries which really differ. You know, to read such an amount of reports, in addition to all the United Nations agencies which are providing their own reports, and country teams of the UN agencies. I was once a rapporteur for one country, and the number of pages I had to read was 1,600, and that was Italy. So, you know, you can't manage. You have 2 weeks for dialogues with the state parties, and every day a new delegation. So I would really call on you for the shadow reporting, whether you can somehow coordinate. I know it's difficult because NGOs represent very different interests and fields of their activity. But if possible, try at least to have one comprehensive, and then for particular issues where you will find that those are the priorities, you can then elaborate a more specific and targeted report to the committee. Because, saying you frankly, in particular when they are not translated in all official UN languages. You have experts who are not good in using English. Even for me, that should be a condition for any expert to be elected to the human rights treaty bodies, but it's not. And we have colleagues who speak Spanish and do not speak English. And they cannot read your reports because they are not translated. Often, I was receiving only shadow reports in Spanish, and I wasn't able to read them. So you must be aware of this specific situation. And what I would also like, just to say, to conclude, because my time has run out, that use the statement from 2010 on the role of NGOs vis-à-vis the CEDAW committee, because The committee in this statement really encourages the state party to provide sustained funding to NGOs in their activities relating to promotion and monitoring of the implementation of CEDAW, its optional protocol and concluding observations, and that through this funding they should also enable them to participate in the constructive dialogue with the committee. It happened in past that once Norway, we were having constructive dialogue with the state delegation of Norway, and their human rights ombuds read a paper of NGOs which informed the CEDAW committee that they couldn't come to participate in the constructive dialogue because they had no funding, and the state doesn't fund their participation in Geneva. And after we issued this statement, the next time NGOs told us that they were using it and that the government funded their participation in Geneva. So if you have any problems, try to use that. But first, really, it's very important how you prepare for the dialogue next February or beginning of March. But what is equally or almost more important is that you coordinate among you and you set an action after the concluding observation will be given. How really to meet with the government, with the relevant ministries, with other relevant state institutions, in order to start immediately implementing the committee's recommendation, in particular the set of two groups of recommendation which the committee now uses to select two priorities from the recommendation, for which the state is asked to provide a report on their implementation in 2 years' time. The CEDAW committee realized that in almost majority of the state parties to the convention, CEDAW becomes relevant only when the countries see that, yeah, it's our due time to start preparing a report under CEDAW convention. And as you see in the case of Ireland, even that was not a motivator to submit the periodic report in due time. So that is, I congratulate you for all these preparatory events, and I'm glad that in the afternoon I will remain with you, and we can speak more if you have any specific interest, in particular then how to engage with the CEDAW committee when you are in Geneva. But really I urge you, start thinking what you will do afterwards, and really to prioritize, to give a hint to the CEDAW committee what should be the follow-up concerns and the adequate recommendations. And also to give a hint to the experts that will come during the lunchtime break for NGOs briefing, when you will come to sit with those experts that will come during lunchtime for the briefing, also to see what you see as the best steps that might be realistic because of the time context. Because sometimes it's so important that you decide to prioritize certain recommendations which fit very well in the specific time context. I don't know, if you are in the process of changing certain laws, it means now is the time to come with a very, very, very strong message. And that also is more realistic for being implemented in a 2 years' time than some recommendations which might require a very, very long process to have them adequately addressed through the policy and legal measures. So I will stop here. I have much things in my mind, but when I start talking, I'll just...
Thank you.
I must conclude loudly, and I must say that I can't leave this, how do you call it, roster?
Yeah.
Without wishing you and all those NGOs who are not here but have been and will be involved, and also to your state delegation, smooth and effective preparatory work and a very successful dialogue with the committee, which I'm certain will be an exciting adventure with the sole objective of better protection of human rights of women in Ireland and all over the world. Thank you so much.